Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam. Good morning. Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Today is Tuesday, March 28th, 2023. And unfortunately, we are faced as a nation, as parents, as humanity, with another incident of a school shooting. I saw the announcement yesterday, and just as I often do, with issues of local violence, and issues like this, just felt compelled to reach out to someone and say, hey, can we hold space for parents and caregivers to have a conversation about this topic? As much as we know that we attempt to protect our young people from this information, to filter what they consume from media and social media, they are very skilled and apt. Also, they are around their peers and other children who, for whatever reason, parents may not be able to filter as much as you desire to. Their children are aware, and just like we do, they talk. And so there is presumption that our young people are dealing with this. It may display itself in different behavior. We have to also consider that our young people may be dealing with this in a post-COVID era and everything that came with that. And so I reached out to Dr. Ronke Pedersen, who is often a guest here from MGH. And thanks to our partnership with MGH, we were able to make this connection. But I have a wonderful young woman in who I looked up and saw on the internet and does great things in this space. We're also going to name, we're still in Women's History Month, and just want to honor her and thank her for coming into the cafe this morning to help us hold space for this topic. She is a teen and child psychiatrist, and just in the fact that she wrote Dr. Nicole there, that kind of lets you know a little bit of her character and her approach to this work. And so, Dr. Nicole, first of all, thank you so much. In less than 24 hours, Dr. Ronke reached out. And she said, I have someone that moves in this space and can chat with you. And so thank you so much for availing yourself, dealing with the technical difficulty back there. We got it resolved. Thank you for being here. Please say hello to the audience, introduce yourself, and then we'll jump in because I want to honor your time. We'll jump in with this conversation and hopefully we will end with some tools and tricks. And I hate to say tricks, some tools and resources for parents and caregivers to talk to their children around this subject.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. Again, my name is Nicole Christian Brathwaite. I am a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist. I live in Boston. Originally, I'm from Philadelphia, so I rep Philly, Eagles, Sixers.
Watch it. You know what you know.
I know. I just had to slip that in there.
We need the joy.
I also am the CEO and founder of Well Mind Psychiatry and Consulting. My clinical specialty is in trauma, particularly trauma in children, race-based trauma, and also recognizing that a lot of the things that we go through on a day-to-day basis are traumatic, and really supporting individuals, families, and communities around how to manage it.
Dr. Nicole, let me ask you this. From your opinion and observation, are our children aware? And I want to set some context. When I say children, I will try to be specific where we need to be. But right now, I'm talking on the spectrum of the ability to take that device. And let's talk all the way up to high school. I think we've done some of our older teens a little bit of a disservice in this concept of them still being children. And so, in the whole overwhelm, we'll talk children, we include teens, but specifically to this question, are our children, let's say 5 to 11, are they aware from your observation?
Surprisingly, yes. I'm also a mother. I have a 6 and 8-year-old, and I've been intentional about not discussing school shootings with them. My 6-year-old tends to be a little bit anxious. He worries a lot, and so recognizing that's his temperament, I've been careful about not discussing or keep assuming I am withholding information that I feel like would be harmful, except when they come home and tell me their friend told them about the school shooting or their teacher brought up the school shooting. And suddenly I realized that I'm unequipped. I thought we were good. I thought that I not talking about it meant they weren't exposed to it. However, there are so many different ways that our children are exposed. And, we all know like an 8-year-old can manage the phone and go on social media better than most adults can. And the problem is we also don't know what information they're receiving. And that can be the biggest challenge. So the assumption is, yes, assume your kids know, but the question is, what do they know?
Thank you for your transparency as a presumption. As someone who's a clinician that would move in this space, you would any and everything going, hey, let's check in. And so thank you for the transparency as a parent. And if you who moves in this space, a professional, was struggling and attempting not, other parents are as well. And so I had that presumption, and that's why we're here. Can we talk a little bit about the impact of being aware and having this information? What does it do, and how may it potentially display itself in our children?
Absolutely. And, this school shootings, as well as any violent acts, racial violence, it certainly impacts them. And the concern is that we don't exactly know what they're being told, right? So social media is great in that it can be a great resource for information, for truth. We can find out what's happening around the country, around the globe. However, we do know that there's some people that don't have good intentions, and the information that they're sharing the information is meant to be harmful. It's meant to target vulnerable populations like our kids, and scare them and lead to negative thoughts, or lead them down to these negative paths that can put negative thoughts or untruths into their mind. And so, the one thing that I would start with first is we have to know what the information is that our kids are receiving. And so that's how I ultimately found out from my children what they know. So, asking them about their school day, how are things going? Did you hear or learn anything today that was upsetting? And immediately this was the first topic that came up.
So I'm just typing, as I told you in the email, I'll do things in real time. So the first thing is know what information, ask them, have a conversation with your children. It's interesting. I grew up in the era that at 5 p.m., we were at the dinner table no matter what. You had to be home, out, whatever. You had to wash your hands and be ready at 5 p.m. And we don't have that for various reasons. No judgment call here. That model is not as active in today's society. And so we also now in the whole spectrum, let's talk a little bit about our 13 to senior in high school. It's interesting because they don't want to, presumably a portion of them don't want to talk. What are some ways that you can attempt to gauge and assess where they are in sort of the 13 to senior high school group when talking to them?
Yeah, I mean, one, I know we talk a lot about privacy, but when it comes to safety, looking at their phones, looking at their web browser history, looking at their internet search history. And I know a lot of kids will talk about, us invading their privacy. Yes. Right, exactly. How dare you? We can absolutely have a conversation with them about it, but if you don't know how to address it. And so again, like I said, there are people who have nefarious intent. And so we want to know. We want to know if they're on a website following someone who we can clearly see is trying to do harm. And so again, privacy is absolutely important, but safety trumps privacy. So one thing I would do is have a conversation with them, but also be aware. You know, having a, and not saying you have to be on their phone every day or looking at their computer every day, but having a general sense of what their search history is and where they're getting their information from. And the second I would say is, you know, try to have conversations when they're slightly distracted. When you tell a teenager, hey, we need to talk, they immediately, like, they clam up and they start to shut down, or, you know, they'll try to get away from the conversation. But if you're driving them home from school, driving them home from basketball, or, you know, if you just offer to take a walk with them if they're willing, or, you know, while they're eating dinner. So trying to bring the conversation in when they're in a relaxed state, when they're in a position where they may be more open to having a conversation, and also they have a little bit of a distraction. We may notice that teens, it may be hard to, you know, maintain eye contact, or they're fidgeting, or they're kind of looking away. And sometimes those distractions are helpful when you're having a difficult conversation and it may be uncomfortable to kind of sit still and talk about it, particularly if it's bringing up significant emotion for them.
One of the things I'll add, and you're the professional here, but I've seen the video. I think it's about smoking or vaping, and the parents in the ring light, you know, doing the dance. Be random, but don't be fake. Just
Right.
as a youth worker, I have, because they'll pick up.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so let me ask you, as a parent, how does one prepare themselves to have this conversation? Because in today's times, our young people are so much more aware of a lot. And I just want to also name that a lot of what you're naming about social media is on a broader context, not just in reference to their awareness about school shootings, but predators and things like that, human trafficking. Let's just name that that's a skill set that is applicable, sort of, period.
Right.
And so how does a parent prepare themselves to have this conversation without knowing, especially with our older ones, but some of our younger ones as well, what will come up from there?
I mean, one, I would say be open. I think as parents, we tend to make assumptions. We answer the question for a child before they answer it. We ask it and then answer the question ourselves. We also, I think, as adults, we've seen a lot, we've experienced a lot. So we sometimes tend to minimize the experience of our children. So if our child says they're overwhelmed, if they say they're stressed, if they say that this is difficult, our reaction shouldn't be, well, it's not that bad. Or, well, you know, that happened way over there. You shouldn't worry about that. It's really important to acknowledge and affirm how our children feel. So that's the first thing I would say. Even if you don't have the answers, even if you don't have the skills, the first thing, again, is going back to listening and affirming. And, you know, as you said, it's not just about school shootings. And in any situation, our children need to feel heard. And one technique that I use in my practice, and I tell all of my families and patients to use, is something called reflective listening. So that's essentially, it's a skill, and it seems common sense, but it's actually hard to do. So if I'm having a conversation with my child and they're telling me a story, before I jump in to give advice, or before I jump in and offer my opinion, I summarize what they've told me. So, you know, it sounds like what you're telling me is that this is really stressful, or this is overwhelming because you worry that you or your friends aren't safe. Is that what I'm hearing? And sometimes you can even throw in an emotion like that. That must be scary. That must be anxiety provoking, to also help our kids build an emotional vocabulary so that they can actually identify what they're feeling. And by summarizing what they've told you, then you're on the same page, because so often conflict is from miscommunication and misunderstandings. But if we're summarizing what they've told us, then it means we're hearing. And if we're wrong, that gives them the opportunity to correct us.
Now, again, naming another skill set that's beyond this, communication, and that's something that parents, all of us, can benefit from. But I just wanted to also name that in today's society, and we used to have a segment with Dee Dee's Cry a couple of years ago, where, you know, that in education spaces, and due to some research that your field has done, we are very intentional about giving our young children the ability around emotional intelligence. And so now, you know, when I was growing up, to hear a 3-year-old or 4-year-old, I don't know if I'm at the right age of them clearly articulating, but to say, Ma, I don't like how you made me feel when you said that to me. And I mean, I've seen some of this, and I'm sitting there, and the old parent in me is like, what? And so let's just name that some of the older parents and parents that may have been reared in what's that old school tradition, maybe on a little bit of a learning curve. Let's name that some grandparents are now, for various reasons, raising their children, their grandchildren, and they're like,
Mhm.
excuse me. And so let's just name also that parents will have to adjust to this child. So I just wanted to review a couple of things for anyone that is popping in. These are some of the skills that we got so far. Know the information, ask them. Dr. Nicole named the valid piece of our older children, our teens who want their privacy. But as my pastor used to say, as long as you're in the bedroom of where I pay rent, you can have a little lock on the door. But if also I'm paying the phone bill, give it up. I want to also, and I just thought about this, it's imperative away just from incidents and situations for parents to be intentional about good relationships, naming that some of these children are changing before your very eyes. Some of them are displaying some of your characteristics, and it's hard for you to look in the mirror. And so let's just, name that as well. One of the other things that you mentioned is have conversations when they are distracted, be random. I threw in, don't be fake. Don't try to just up and do something because they'll pick up on it and then a barrier will already be there. As parents, don't make assumptions about what they know, what they don't know, and if I heard you right, what they're feeling. Don't make those assumptions as well. Listen and affirm your children. They need to feel heard. If I could also say, they need to be heard and not just that fake of feeling, if you will. Summarize what you heard from them and also identify what they're feeling. And if you miss something, as you said, it provides an opportunity for them to say, no, ma, no, dad, no, auntie, or whomever, this is what I'm really saying. All right. Thank you. One of the other things I wanted to ask you about is we've heard this term before, vicarious trauma. Do our young people have it?
And it hurts to talk about because I feel like we're raising a generation exposed to trauma unnecessarily. And so, essentially vicarious trauma is witnessing an event or even hearing about an event that is threatening, that is life threatening, that is incredibly overwhelming or stressful. Even if it didn't happen directly to you, you're exposed to it. And what ends up happening is that you develop symptoms as if you were there, as if you were the individual experiencing the trauma, or it was your family member who was lost.
Hold on, I'm sorry, because we've talked about this a lot, and I've never heard anyone articulate it. I know it, but say that again. You experience the symptoms literally as if you
were there, as if you were the parent standing outside the school waiting to see if your child is safe.
Okay.
So, and it's not even just with school shootings. There's been evidence showing that Black people, when watching videos of racial violence, end up having increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, and even 6 months after witnessing some of these videos, people still display signs of PTSD and anxiety. So it's not benign. It's not nothing when we're watching this over and over again, looking at the violence, hearing about the violence. It's, even if we're not aware, it's planting a seed in our minds and in our spirits.
Dr. Nicole, it's interesting because I got a inbox sort of, here we go again, the same sort of conversation, but this needs to be reiterated across the board over and over and over and over again. And though we're holding space for parents to talk to their children, I hope that parents are also recognizing that they need to be intentional about their self-care. They need to, let me just ask, what are some ways that parents can sort of offload? And we know that therapy and things like that, but due to life in some situations, stigma and things, and we're working on it. But what are some ways that parents, we talked about preparing themselves. What are some ways that within themselves, if they don't have a partner or that confidant, that they can sort of decompress, for lack of better words, with what they just heard from their child? Because it's real for parents. And I think even so much so now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say that the term "it takes a village" applies to everything in our community. So when we are watching this, when you're looking at it, not holding it, in yourself, not just thinking about it and going over and over it in your mind. If you have a village, use them, right? Reach out to people who you recognize can be supportive, who will hear you, who will listen, who are open to having the conversation and are willing to be transparent or even vulnerable about their fears and stress. Like I have friends who they're also mothers, and they're watching the same news, and we're able to have a conversation and support each other. Because if I just sit with it, my mind starts going, and I get anxious and I get worried, and I'm 10 years down the road already thinking about worst case scenario. And so it's really important to have that other person, that community, to help ground you.
It's interesting because, as the old folks used to say, don't let it fester.
Exactly.
And there is a balance with acknowledging in the moment and being present with what you're feeling. And I think we often say here, it's okay not to be okay. Where the concern comes is if it's, and I'm so old, if you wallow, if you sit with it sort of too long, where behavior changes, your eating habits change, your sleeping habits change, then you need to think about tapping into that village, and at best case scenario, reach out to a professional to get some help, and have a conversation with someone like you who is trained to help you deal with what you're dealing with in the moment.
And I think it's okay to also acknowledge and recognize this is traumatic. This is not normal, right? It's not normal to, on a regular basis, be exposed to children being killed, feeling like you're not safe in your own community or your own school. Like this, even though it's happening at a regular cadence and it's frequent, it doesn't make it normal, and it doesn't make it acceptable. So if you find that you are having, nightmares, flashbacks, you can't let go of the thoughts, as you said, your behavior changes, your eating habits, your sleeping habits, maybe you're even more irritable. It's of course you would be. This is traumatic. And as a parent, the one thing we want more than anything is to keep our children safe. And to be in this situation where you're constantly seeing other parents having to suffer through this, of course you're going to be exhausted. Of course you're going to be frustrated. And as you mentioned, if it gets to the point where it's impacting your functioning, your quality of life, then it's worth having a conversation with a professional. And you don't need to be sick to see a therapist, just like we don't need to be sick to see our doctor. Sometimes it's preventative.
And seeing a therapist, I just want to name this, seeing a therapist does not mean that you are sick. Someone tweeted me back yesterday and said that they're very honest about, I have mental health issues. And the response that people get, and I think she does it a little intentionally to spark a conversation, but sometimes the response she gets is that, wait, what? We all do. Yeah. We all have something that we're dealing with mentally, from being conceited all the way up to something so serious as worrying about our children. I just want to say I'm not a judgment statement in that first thing about being conceited. But Doc, I want to also ask, what are some, let's say you talk to your children, I'm good, no, I didn't know, and they're fronting, lying, with all due respect to the children. What are some behaviors that parents should look out for? We name some things with the adults. They may be the same, but I want to ask with our children, and especially let's go back a little bit into our 5 to 12-year-olds. What are some of the behaviors that parents need to look out for, even if they do talk and they say they're okay or whatever? What are some things that parents need to look out for to maybe reinvigorate another conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. So when kids are overwhelmed or upset, they tend to regress. And frankly, when adults are upset or overwhelmed, we regress too. So if you find that your 12-year-old was used to be more articulate and was more willing to have a conversation, maybe now they're having tantrums. Maybe now like they're getting irritable as soon as you ask a question, and it seems like their reaction is so out of proportion to whatever the question or comment was. So paying attention to that regression in behavior. With younger kids, they may start having accidents, and they're fully potty trained, haven't had a problem in years, and suddenly they're displaying that kind of behavior. And one of the biggest things to look for is performance and relationships in school. So our kids spend the majority of their time in school. So if you reach out to the teacher and just ask for an update, not even just around academics, but how is my child doing in their relationships with their friends, with their peers? Have you noticed any change in their temperament? Are they more quiet? Are they more shut down? Are they more irritable? Do they seem more disconnected? And are their grades changing? Are they suddenly, A, B student now moving to C, D all of a sudden, or are unwilling to engage in work that they used to be able to do, or now so frustrated about reading, and 3 months ago reading was something that they enjoyed. So looking at that, and then also looking at behaviors at home. So if you're seeing that your child is isolating more, if you're seeing that your child again is feeling disconnected, often when we're exposed to trauma, we go into fight, flight, or freeze. And it's the same thing with kids. It just may look slightly different, right? Fight for a kid may be irritability and fighting back and being, being disrespectful the way we see it. The freeze is just they're there, but they're not there. You're having a conversation with them and you can tell that their minds are somewhere else. They're not able to be present. And that same with the flight. So they're, as soon as you want to have a conversation, they're gone, or they're out all the time with their friends more so, and they're purposely avoiding interaction with family. And if you start to see those things, number one, having a conversation with them if they're willing, but if not, reaching out to other adults in their lives, auntie, uncle, school, to offer support, because they may be willing to talk to another adult. They may not be willing to talk to you, but having that trusted person. And then finally, if there's concern around safety, that's an emergency. But if there really is concern that the quality of their lives and their functioning is being impacted, looking for a therapist.
Absolutely. And as we get ready, wow, it's 9:33 already. Nicole, I didn't know I asked you for about a half an hour. We often share information about, I believe it's 998-988 to call if you need to. What's the proper number so I don't mess up? 988?
Yes. But you know what? Let me double check.
Yeah,
But yes, I believe.
listen, I told you we do this stuff in real time.
988.
988 is somewhere that you can call if you need to talk to someone as a parent and just being overwhelmed. If there's a private chat there, if there's anything, your website, if there's a website or link or anything that we can share right now in real time, because we got Dr. Nicole booked about 10 o'clock last night. Please feel free to put that in the private chat. I will cut and paste and share it here. But we just really thought it was important. If you're just tuning in late, I see Boston Media is in the building. Please share this information with your network because I know some younger parents and parents are dealing with this with their children as well. And so we just thought it was important to have this space this morning to share what Dr. Nicole shared. And we have a resource for you here. This one I'm actually going to put in the comments because you will be able to go and just give me a second because I'm going to have to go in to Facebook on the phone. I'm going to pin it at the top. So it'll be right there. Dr. Nicole, while I'm doing that, tell us a little bit about your company and what it is you do here in Boston in case folks. Now, often when folks like you come on, number one question is she taking patients? But generally tell us if you are, share that as well. But generally tell us what you do away from being a resource to our community like you are this morning. Well, even what you do is a more resource. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to go ahead and pin this comment.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I'm the CEO and founder of Well Mind Psychiatry and Consulting. So a large part of my mission is around education and support of children, particularly underserved children. So I do a lot of work in schools, training teachers, training staff on how to support our kids when they've been exposed to trauma, training teachers on how to support themselves when they've been exposed to trauma. And I do see patients. If you go to headway.com and you can kind of search for me, you can absolutely schedule an appointment with me. Or if you have questions or you're looking for a therapist, I am more than happy to provide additional resources, particularly if you're looking for a therapist or psychiatrist of color. And again, I do a lot of speaking engagements to communities, to mothers groups, to parents groups, to churches, because so many people in our community are suffering, and we need to be open and have the conversation.
It is so imperative. And I never got into pin the comment, but I'll put that. It's there later. You all, it's right here. It's in the recent comment. So that is a hyperlink with guidelines for helping you after a recent shooting. And is this something curated by your company?
No, this is by a national organization called the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. Okay. And if you go to their website, they have dozens of resources that are free. And it's just, it's a vetted website. It's a vetted organization that provides trusted information. And I know sometimes you can Google things and the information might not always be accurate. So this is one organization where we know for a fact that their information is evidence-based and it's safe.
Okay. Thank you so much. Dr. Nicole, I really appreciate you. I really have a strong feeling this won't be your last time with us. And so I have to thank Dr. Ronke for this connection. Thank you for being this resource to our community. And if we can ever be of any service to you, please let us know you're getting information out. I'm definitely going to sidebar you later on this afternoon just to check in. And again, we are here to make sure that you all have information like this and have the resource to have these difficult conversations, but hopefully you're walking away with some tools and tips. I'm going to let you go and review what you said, but thank you so much. And we also send support and positivity and love your way for you, because I know as a clinician, you all take, and you do have clinical supervision and someone I have to ask. Okay. All right. Just making sure. But thank you so much. And thank you for being this resource to us this morning with a very, very last minute notice. It shows your dedication to community. Thank you.
Thank you for opening the door. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Everyone, we thought it was so important this morning that we talked with Dr. Nicole to make sure that you are aware of this information. We still need to, as long as there are still shootings, as long as there are still young people being killed, as long as there's poverty and lack of equity, those subjects will be addressed here. There are other platforms that address and do other things, and you are more than welcome to be a part of those. But in this space, we'll employ some of those things. Y'all know we do food, entertainment, a little bit of gossip and ratchery. But please never, ever get it twisted that the pillars are information, awareness, and mobilization to action to improve our quality of life. So I just thought I would need to make that plain. Just going to go over what Dr. Nicole shared real quick. Know what your children are consuming. Ask them about it. Have a conversation with them about it. I know it's their phone. They may have part-time jobs and they pay the bill. There's a way for you to assert your parenthood. And if there is an intentional ongoing relationship with them, even though let's name these are teens and they don't want to deal with you. I'm 51 years old, and sometimes on social media, I'm still like, Ma. So that's real. All right. Have conversations when they are distracted. Be random with them. Don't be fake. But you're talking about something, or you're cooking, or you're eating, you're going to get something to eat or whatever, and just, talk about something and quickly switch the subject and ask. Also, as parents, be open and do not assume what their response will be. As much as you may be surprised, watch your body language, watch your tone of voice, watch your eyes, be aware that you don't want to let them know that you're alarmed, though you really may be. Listen and affirm your children. They need to feel heard, not just feel heard, but listen to them and hear them. Summarize and I got a typo there. Summarize and repeat back what you believe you heard from them. Also, identify with what they're feeling. If you can make an identification on something that you heard from them and say, hey, I was feeling the same way too, or when I was younger, I felt like that. How are you dealing with it? This is how I dealt with it. If you are a parent that for whatever reason, that child is just not going to converse with you right now, there are other adults in their life. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I was on to utilize the other adults. Use the village, which is the other adults are a part of your village. But as a parent, what Dr. Nicole shared was use your village. Tap into that neighbor that you have coffee with on the stoop every morning. Tap into your pastor. Tap into your best friend. To some extent, well, no, I'm not going to say that. All right. Utilize other adults in their lives. If you are having difficulty breaking through and they just don't want to deal with you, you just took their computer or didn't get them shoes or sneakers they wanted and they just shut down. They're not dealing with you. Utilize someone else in their life that they have a relationship with, to have them talk with them, to check in and make sure that they're okay. Also, at worst case scenarios, if you feel overwhelmed and you have no one else to talk to, you can call 988 and talk with someone there. They are trained to have a conversation with you And also, if you want information about the services, and also to go to wellmindsconsulting.com and search for Dr. Nicole Brathwaite, Dr. Nicole Christian Brathwaite, Brathwaite, and she may have some availability there for slots for therapy. All right. That is it for us this morning. Tomorrow we have the wonderful pleasure of having a great young lady who typically is behind the scenes in a lot of great work and was very instrumental in the Embrace Boston activity that happened recently. And so we have Camila de la Vega Maldonado, who will be with us tomorrow morning. She's going to talk a little bit about her story, first time doing it in this sort of setting, and really just opening up about her journey to where she is today. And so she will be with us tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And if you notice, I haven't done a lot of advertising and naming it specifically, but this is Women's History Month. And off the top of my head, at least 90% of our guests have been women this month who are leading in various spaces and doing wonderful things. And so, women, we salute you, not just in March, but 24/7, 365. Just like Black History Month, Women's History Month is exactly the same. All right. That is it for me this morning. We will see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Please tag parents and caregivers. Share this to networks and groups that you are a part of, and let them know about the information that was received here today. Thank you all so much. Just a quick update, and you all see Mama Java is on. So she got her phone, so she's doing a lot better. I talked to her this morning, and she said that she may go home today. And so just continue to keep her in your prayers. Thank you to everyone that called, text, inbox, and checked on her and checked on me and my sisters as well. It is much, 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 much appreciated. All right. I think that is it. Actually, I'm talking about Stan, we hold you up as well. And Auntie has you covered as well. True brother Stan, give God and ask for someone to speak with her. It's interesting being a parent. Love you too, Ma. It's interesting being a parent. Reverend Hammond said the other day, even as Mariama and I around, I think she's a little bit younger, around the same age, he talked about, Reverend Mariama hit him up and said, "Hey, I need you to go get something for me." And so you never stop being a parent. And so we celebrate all of you as parents. And that's why we thought it was important to bring this resource to you this morning. All right. Thank you, Nikki. This is for your caregivers and providers at your program as well. Just so they are aware with the varying ages and families and stuff they work with, just some skill sets that maybe they can share with their parents. So thank you for all that you do in community, Nikki. And congratulations on that certification. I saw that post, you and your staff. Congratulations on that. All right, folks, I am off of here. I'm tired. So that means that this was a good session today. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Have a great day, everybody, and do your best to take a circumstance that you're dealing with that seems like a test. Today is Testimony Tuesday, do a different topic. But just remember that test is there for a reason, and you have the ability to pass it. It may be hard, and you may have to study. You might even have to repeat it, but you're going to have a testimony when you come out of it. Have a wonderful day, everybody. And we'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Thank you.